Hello and welcome to Magic That Matters, Themes of Voice and Visibility in Agatha All Along. This panel will explore how Agatha All Along, which many consider to be the best Marvel series to date, uplifts underrepresented voices and challenges traditional narratives through both its themes and collaborative creative process. Now, this isn't going to be a technical breakdown of the show, and I'm going to try not to ask for spoilers and secrets from our favorite characters from our panelists. Instead, it's going to be a discussion that highlights the heart and intent behind the show and its larger impact, offering a powerful behind the scenes look at how stories like this can shape culture and deeply resonate with audiences. And I really feel that this conversation is going to show why we need more stories like Agatha All Along. My name is Ron Solo. I'm the editor in chief of POCculture.com, where we celebrate diversity in pop culture. I believe passionately that representation matters. And that's why I'm so excited today to be speaking with key members of the creative team for Agatha. Let's start by introducing our panelists. Panelists, if you could give a little wave or your favorite heart emoji gesture when I introduce you. First, we have Mary Livanos, executive producer on Agatha All Along and executive of production and development at Marvel Studios. Mary, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Next, we have Gia King, a writer whose credits include HBO's A Black Lady sketch show and who wrote episode 7, Death's Hand in Mine, with Cameron Squire of Agatha All Along, which was a mind-blowingly awesome episode that I loved so much. Gia, great to chat with you.
Thank you so much.
And finally, we have Michael Paraskevas, who is a co-composer of Agatha All Along and whose previous credits include WandaVision, Hawkeye, and Frozen 2. Basically, Michael is responsible for the music that you can't get out of your head from this wonderful show. Michael, great to chat with you.
Thanks for having us, Ron.
All right, it's so great to chat with you all, and let's dive right in. Mary, I'm going to start with you. You've been with Marvel Studios since 2012, and you've worked on projects like Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain Marvel, and WandaVision, some of my absolute favorites. From your perspective, how has the importance of storytelling and representation evolved over your time with the studio, especially with something like Agatha All Along that really explores identity and otherness in a direct way?
That's a great question. I really think that as time has gone on, the audience is really primed to love these incredibly complex characters. And we understand what superhero movies look like and feel like. And so the opportunities to do something different just grow and grow. So with Agatha, we were really excited about exploring all the different tones that we could. We knew that Catherine Hahn could do absolutely anything. And I think audiences are just really excited to see what differences could be brought to the genre.
Yeah, and this show, I think that's really what stands out. It really is different and unique, and that's why I think it's so beloved. Gia, going to you as one of the writers on the show, I know you personally really have a passion for coming of age stories, and we see a little bit of that in Billy and even all the other characters. We see that power isn't always clean or even heroic. It can be messy and selfish. And so how did these ideas really resonate with you and get you excited about writing on the show?
Well, I really enjoy. I feel like coming of age narratives are inherently sort of nonlinear and messy, like you said. Like anytime that we're developing or discovering ourselves or learning new things about ourselves, we're going to take a few backslides, we're going to take a few steps back, and it's going to change the way that we see and interact with the world. And Agatha was my favorite character from WandaVision. So being brought on to explore, Agatha's journey through self-discovery and self-empowerment was really, really exciting to me. And the idea of, specifically with Lilia, taking this witch who has sort of lived such a full life, but still feels as though she doesn't fully understand her journey or fully understand her narrative until it all kind of slots into place over the course of this series it just felt like very special to me. And I feel like we talked a lot about in the room about not making Agatha feel like squeaky clean. Like we wanted her to be able to achieve some good, but in like a bad way. And that felt very interesting and also very kind of like unexplored within the MCU. Obviously, we've done anti-hero narratives before, but like the way that witches have been historically treated and the way that we could fold that into our narrative and our thematic storytelling was just super super exciting.
Yeah, and mission accomplished. I mean, Agatha is so messy, right? And I think
Yeah.
that really comes through, but that's what makes her so beloved. And she was also one of my favorite characters in WandaVision. So just beautiful to see that story
Mhm.
play out. Now, Michael, coming to you, there really is an emotional connection that the music has to like Agatha as a character, to the series as a whole. And what was your approach in wanting to help audiences connect with all these, you know, pretty layered and complex emotions and identities that the show is dealing with through the music that maybe dialogue can't do?
Yeah, I think one of the special things about music is that how it can really, lean into the subliminal and all, underscore all the subtext throughout the show. And as you were saying, like we have all these messy characters and there's so many layers to them. And with music, we have, can have like strong identifiable themes for different characters, and then we're able to transform that and morph it to really underscore their journey and to really highlight these different moments and, the shifting tones and moods. And I think ultimately too, like the growth of the characters throughout the show is, each person's like has their struggles and they're feeling disenfranchised or something, and like how they all seek to, for empowerment and all have this, sort of journey of identity. And so I think musically we're able to really support that and reinforce the broader themes of the show.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Every time I hear just Agatha all along, just the music, her theme is stuck in my head, and I think that's just so. That's really what makes a series or show or film iconic, and so that's what makes the series special to me. Now, Mary, coming to you, like I mentioned, you've been with Marvel since 2012, and much like Thanos, you've grown in influence, I'm sure, and responsibility and power. But that comes with a lot of responsibility. And I'm just curious from your perspective, how you seek to make sure that spaces like the Agatha creative team includes diverse voices in as part of the creative process.
I mean, it's a great question, but a very simple answer. You hire diverse, incredible folks who represent your characters well. And I would be remiss to not mention Jack Schaefer. This was incredibly important to her as well. And it's something that we always discussed and always prioritized. There wasn't one hire that we made on the show where we didn't discuss, what personally they were bringing to the table, how they could enhance the representation in our show. We had really lofty goals for what this show could do in terms of representation. So the writers' room was an incredible space for us, a really wonderful safe space where we had a lot of discourse and we felt comfortable discussing heavy topics with each other and what it might mean to people. We knew that these characters would mean a lot to the audience. Billy was a character who was very long awaited and anticipated by the fandom and is probably one of Marvel's most iconic gay characters. And so, ensuring that we hired an actor who was comfortably out and making sure that we had voices in the room that could well represent him, um, you know, is just one conversation that we had out of many, 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 many. Um, and it's just really wonderful to see how warmly received all of our characters were with the audience in the show. But I'm sure Gia could expand more about what the experience was like in the room too.
Yeah, I mean, it was wonderful. Agatha was my first gig like my first professional writing gig, and so I I felt very spoiled being in that room, and I've talked about how spoiled I felt in every subsequent room I've been in because it was just such a loving and welcoming environment, especially for anybody to like speak to their experience or maybe speak to like a concern. There was always constant check-ins of like, are we handling this the best way we can be? Are we doing this with the way that honors like who we're trying to create it for? And like Mary said, like we knew that we were going to be telling the story of one of Marvel's most iconic queer characters, and the sort of queer subtext of the series was something that we were talking about from day one, just like believing in like a coven of witches and putting them together. We're like, that is just inherently queer story to tell. Like a coven is a queer group of people. And so that was always top of mind, and I was so happy that it was never like swept to the sidelines or pushed aside in honor of like or in pursuit of something different. It was always something that was part of the story and a very important part of the story, and oftentimes the basis of the story. And so I felt very spoiled by that room, and I continue to seek experiences like it anywhere I go.
I would also add we just something that I think was really good that we talked about a lot. We really wanted a lot of positive representation. You know, there's the story of the struggle and the fear and like the hardships that folks face when they're coming out or living as a queer person, but just like a one and that certainly does exist in the show, but I think something else that we're really proud of is just one facet. Billy has like a loving, wonderful boyfriend who's supportive and is his rock. Um, it was just really nice to have characters exist in the show and feel like people that we know and love in our lives and the people sitting around the table.
I love that because a lot of times we can have these stories about marginalized voices or marginalized backgrounds, but then it's all about the suffering. And it's like almost traumatic to watch it even on screen when it's solely focused on the struggle. Not that those stories aren't important, but I really did feel like this was truly like an uplifting series that celebrated even the messiness, like we've talked about many times. I think that really came through. So I appreciate that. And Michael, you've heard, we were talking about this idea of like Gia mentioned, honoring the those that this show was made for. And from your perspective, so you have to put the music to that. You have to really tie that emotional tie together. So how did you approach being able to celebrate those individual identities and experiences in a way through music?
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, these are all human stories. And I think what we're doing is like our same approach as we treat any character in any story is that, we're looking for who they are and where they come from and where they're going throughout their journey and musically how best we can support that. And like you're saying, like there's, each character just has so much complexity to them and so much nuance. And I think musically, like we're just doing our best to, represent that. And I think also like there's just so much joy and love like put into these characters and put into the story. And, when Chris and I came on board, like, in post, like we're kind of hopping on a moving train and we're able to recognize that and see that. And I think for us, there's this sort of responsibility to, to not mess it up, like to do it justice and to keep building on something that's already been just flourishing. And I think I definitely like really recognize that, when we started working on Agatha, I've been on other shows where it's not the same and it's you don't have the same sort of diverse voices and just different perspectives behind not just on screen but behind screen. And I think, immediately that's something that we're able to see and recognize and celebrate together. And I think that really created this just really awesome energy throughout the process. And it's been special just, as it's gone on, like connecting with more and more folks that work on the show because I think it's something that everyone's just aware of in the moment. And hopefully that comes through with the story itself.
Yeah, it does come through. And I was thinking about that. Like, it's a lot of pressure, like you said, not to mess it up. They've made this incredible series, this beautiful story, and you have to come in and make sure that you're sticking the landing, if you will. But you all did, and it was really beautiful from that perspective. Now, Mary, coming back to you, you're so humble. You say like, "Oh, it's simple. Just hire diverse people and great people." But unfortunately, as we can see from other areas in industries, it's not that simple, and it's not always done great. But it was really done great here. And from your perspective, over the last 10 plus years at Marvel, how important do you feel like these stories are in terms of impacting, like we talked about culture, impacting society, having people feel like they're really seen? Have you felt that since this series has been out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the wonderful opportunity and I guess pressure with working at Marvel and putting our characters on screen is that we have such an incredibly large audience. I mean, there's no corner of the globe you can go to without escaping our characters. Um, but I think the proof has just been in the pudding. Our female characters have been so wonderfully embraced. Every time you bring a new type of character to the screen, you capture a whole new segment of, the population to bring into Marvel and to get to know our characters and love them. And just, connecting with the fandom and seeing the just the magnitude of folks who have been able to connect to these characters is incredible. So I mean, I can say again, Jack Schaefer was such a wonderful partner. We had so much trust from the studio. Um, it felt like we were really able to set our intentions, like Gia was saying at the very beginning of this process, and run towards that. So it was a really joyful process, and we didn't encounter many or any roadblocks, I would say. And that's just a really wonderful blessing. And I'm so happy that, we had the creative freedom to tell a story that represented people that we felt like we know and love.
Yeah. And does that experience, I mean, do you have already percolating in your head like other characters and themes that you just feel like after this, okay, I need to continue to branch out and push these types of stories? You don't have to give any secrets, of course, but just one.
I love all of the characters in the Agatha space. Working on WandaVision was incredible. I would love to continue to be able to tell the stories of these characters, but we'll see what the future beholds at Marvel.
Spoken like a veteran. I always say we really need a unique Jack Schaefer like corner of the MCU where all these characters are given more stories and more time to breathe. So I hope we see that. Gia, you talked about how spoiled you are with having this be your first experience, and it really clearly is quite unique and special. Um, Both diversity on screen and behind behind the camera. And I'd love to hear your perspective about how just being in an environment where that seems so inclusive, so positive and affirming, like how did that allow your creativity to like grow and really, pour into the script of this series?
I mean, it was wonderful. I never felt like I had to tailor my ideas for the room, you know. Jack always called our like collective writing effort a mind meld, and it really totally felt like that. I mean, like we like there would just be these cosmic moments where someone would say something and someone else would be like, that's exactly what I was going to say, or like there would be connection over these like weird obscure ideas that then came to fruition in the show. And so I just like having such an inclusive space, having such a supportive space, and a space like not even just supportive of like different perspectives and queer voices, but just like nobody's afraid to throw out whatever idea they have. No one's like, oh, if I have a bad idea, like someone's going to yell at me. Like everyone's just like throwing out whatever they think can work and trying to build everyone else up to make the best version of the show. And that's just an amazing environment to foster creativity and like throw out some of the weirdest possible ideas that you could have. I mean, Cam and I broke the Lilia episode probably two or three times before we arrived at the nonlinear kind of version that has like made its way to the screen. And I remember like late one night when we were kind of beating it out, I was like, well, this would be a crazy idea, but like this, you know, we could do such and such, which is just the, you know, we could lay like weird moments of Lilia throughout the show and then like pay him off in this episode. But that would be crazy. That would give a lot of work to like the other writers. We don't have to do that. And Cam was like, I mean, let's run at it. And then we came in looking like crazy people the next day, throwing like index cards everywhere and being like, so it looks like this, and there's a causal loop, and everybody was like, what are you talking about for the first like half an hour? And then after half an hour of explaining it, it was like, oh, wait, okay, this could be really cool. And then other people started jumping in. Jack was like, I wanted a like memento homage. Like it became a like snowball rolling down a hill. And I never would have thought that we could do that if we had not been so supported up until that point by such a wonderful environment.
That's beautiful to hear. I love that, and I think it's so underrated, right? It's if you don't actually work in a time or an environment where you really do feel affirmed and supported completely and embraced completely by everyone, you really don't know, like, oh, this is how it could be. Like, I could really spread
Absolutely.
my, and I feel like that's pervasive through this show, which was so wonderful. Now, Michael, the diversity and different cultures and backgrounds, that is such an important part of music. And we've talked before about how in your musical studies, you are so happy you studied music beyond just Western influences and that you really explore different cultures. Could you talk a little bit about how you drew from that and infused that into this show?
Yeah, I think with the show, like we're exploring all these different genres and styles, similarly, how we did with WandaVision, but with here, I feel like the the boundaries of it were even more expansive and sort of these worlds that we're visiting. And I think, as just like an avid listener of music and loving, just learning different styles and different instruments and how different music types of music is made, and really understanding those building blocks. I think that's something that, we really looked at for the show, and understanding like what sort of instruments and what sort of musical concepts really, you know, you know, push us into these different directions. Um, and so like the 60s psychedelic music, like that's of course draws on a lot of like Indian music. Um, and so we're able to, really like listen to some of those styles and, incorporate some of that. And you really like hone in on these different, eras that are supported by the costumes and the set design and the performances. And I think it's, yeah, we're just sort of trying to, again, like just sort of be the cherry on top of like what's already there. And I think an important part of that is just, yeah, being open and listening to different things and really letting that, infuse the music and support what's happening on screen.
Yeah. Was there any kind of specific non-Western inspiration? You talked about psychedelic a little bit, but for Agatha or any of the characters that you really were excited about that maybe you hadn't used before?
Yeah, I think like with Agatha's theme, like, we're looking at her and actually Rio as well, like as these sort of more ancient characters. And so we're drawing on, some folk instruments that, aren't used in traditional Western music. And I think also how we're blending, actually also with the trials, and sort of this creating this sort of ethereal sound palette. We like worked in some like meditation bowls and these other colors that I think are very evocative and interesting, and really sort of creating these distinct worlds that that musically is represented. And I think to kind of hop on the previous questions too, I think what was so special with Jack and Mary is that they had this clear vision of where the show was headed and what we were looking to, but they trusted each collaborator to really do the thing and like, explore and like kind of push out of our comfort zone. I think that was really special, and getting the chance to actually explore, and especially on a bigger studio project like this, you don't always get those opportunities. And I think, the end result sort of speaks for itself, and being enabled to do that.
Yeah, I love that. And that's a perfect segue for me to come to you, Mary, about Jack Schaefer. You've talked about working with her and how she helped to really create this incredible environment. I'd love for you to elaborate on that, what it was like working with her, what you appreciate about her creative vision, and just her leadership as part of this series.
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have? Working with Jack is the best. It was incredible working with her on WandaVision, just like the amount of care and love that goes into each character, making sure that each character is fully seen and recognized and serviced. The amount that she prioritizes just like the emotion of the story and making sure that, you know, in Marvel, it's very easy to fall into the plot stakes being overblown, right? The world could very easily been in peril in Agatha, but it wasn't. What was in peril were the relationships that these characters forged throughout the entire show and what personally mattered to them. And because she did such a good job, and because all of our incredible writers did such an incredible job fleshing out these characters, that's what mattered at the end to our audience. And that's all you really need. Um, uh, and yeah, so I mean, Jack prioritizes an incredibly inclusive environment, um, a really playful environment. We're all very encouraged to make it weird. She wants to do everything that sparks her imagination. So she would always say this thing, I want to be like greedy with tone. I want to do it all. And Han was an incredible canvas for that. But, the nature of the trials were an incredible canvas for that. And each of our writers brought to the table different skills and knowledge sets that allowed us to just paint with every color, really. Um, but she's an incredibly enthusiastic, loving leader. And these projects go on for quite a while. It's like Jack says, it's like going on a road trip for 4 years. So you better make sure that you love and work well with the people that are in the car with you. And I would just, you know, be so pleased and lucky to work with her on anything else at any time. She's definitely someone you want at the helm.
Absolutely. That sounds like the type of experience we need for these amazingly beautiful stories. And I think you're exactly right. It's the emotions and the characters being fully developed, which is really hard with an ensemble cast. A lot of times,
Mhm.
maybe the lead gets the spotlight and the other characters don't get the full exposure. But that was unique about this show that I really appreciated. And so going to you, Gia, because you're in the writer's room, and let me tell you, as a geek, as somebody who loves Marvel, like the idea of like Marvel writer's room is like a dream come true. So I'm wondering if you could take us into that room and kind of peel back the curtain. What is it like in these, making it weird brainstorming sessions and trying to break these stories? Like, could you share a little bit about some of your fondest memories in the writer's room?
Well, I was a geek who loves Marvel before I was hired onto this, so it was also a dream come true for me. Um, I think that honestly, the most unique thing about our room, I know that this was a big part of the WandaVision room, which I was not in, and it took like a little while for us to get it up, but Jack and Mary love to cover the walls in like art and like comic inspiration, like key art, any sort of like comps that we can like bring to the show. I'm sure Mary could speak a little bit more on this because it was a big part of WandaVision. Um, but that, I mean, that was a huge thing that like I felt made the energy of the room unique. We could just kind of like take a break and walk around and look at stuff to kind of spark our imagination. Um, and Jack also gives homework, which is way more fun than it sounds. She usually would give us like a more top level idea, something that we had been noodling on all day, and be like, give me maybe like a take on what you think this like high level plot thing. And then usually like five pitches on a very small, like fun thing. So like, I don't know, five pitches for what like Ralph Boner's Reddit username could be, or like five pitches on names for the show, because obviously that changed a bunch, and maybe Agatha was messing with those a lot. Um, uh, but that was so fun just to come into the room, having done the homework and like sitting around, like ready to kind of pitch on like random little fun things. I think one of my fondest memories was when everyone brought in potential lyrics for the ballad. That was really wonderful just because people were saying them and also at Jack's insistence singing them. And it was really, really fun and beautiful.
Okay, Gia, what was one of your favorite potential wildest titles for the show that obviously wasn't used?
Oh, I had them written down. There was one that was like I feel like it was a riff on Sex and the City, but I don't remember. Or maybe it was Agatha the Witch in the Wardrobe. That was also that was one of them. There were just so many crazy ones that I can't pick a favorite.
Wasn't there
But it
one?
was very fun.
Wasn't there one silly one that was like, Agatha will eat your baby?
Yes, yeah, that was also a really good one.
I hope that
Agatha Harkness will eat your baby.
I hope that list can leak someday. There are a lot of good on there.
Yeah.
And then Michael, we need you to compose, music to Agatha Harkness Will Eat Your Baby.
Just
I'm on it.
a death metal ballad.
Some wailing baby noises.
Mary, could you add a little bit to that? Because Gia just mentioned that about creating the environment for this writer's room, putting up art. Like what's your goal, and could you reveal a little bit about how you go about setting the stage?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, putting together the physical room is really fun. We would have either printed out binders or the actual like hard trades of like all the Agatha comics. The goal was to make sure like every appearance existed in that room, and if not, on a thumb drive for everybody. With cool key panels up on the wall. TV shows and films that we referenced would end up on the wall as well. We would just be constantly printing out things that inspired us over the course of the room. Um, this wasn't in Agatha, but it was in WandaVision. There was like a weird beam that interrupted the flow of the wall, and we named it the beam of weirdness. And then every bizarre pitch became visually represented, printed, and put on that beam. That was a blast. Um, and I think and we of course left room to put things up as we went along. Um, but what I think was really important about that process, or is important about that process, um, is just the opportunity, like Gia was saying, to like wander around the room, take a look at different panels. It's often when your brain is relaxed when things start to click into place. Um, and and I also feel sometimes that these characters, these iconic characters, oftentimes, like Gia was saying again, you'll arrive at some ideas that might already exist in the comics, or you might arrive at an idea at the same time as, someone else in the room. But there's something kind of satisfying about that when you sort of tap into the collective conscious, the mind meld. and see that you're on a similar path to what came before. And also the art was just really inspiring too. Um, uh, the Scarlet Witch and the Witch's Road comic was of particular inspiration. It had this sort of like mixed media quality that helped inspire the practical nature and of the Witch's Road. It was a fun time.
That's that's great. We all need like a wall of weird or a beam of weirdness in all our workplaces. I'm going to just put one up and just put random things in my room.
I
Uh,
recommend.
yeah. Michael, your process is obviously a little different, but I know obviously you collaborate with Chris Beck. You've worked together a long time. So could you share a little bit on your end when it comes to your turn with you and Chris and Jack, how that creative process looks like in terms of brainstorming and just putting these sounds together?
Yeah. Like I was saying earlier, like I think we were very early on just empowered to, kind of go for it and sort of step outside our comfort zones. And I think even like some of our first demos had the more kind of traditional Marvel superhero like orchestral sound, but we quickly realized like that wasn't the right vibe for the show. And I think it was almost like a relief of like, oh, we don't have to like fit within these parameters that to sort of really go beyond expectations. And I think, that's like every composer's dream. Like once you hear that, right, shit, like we're gonna go for it, then and let's do it. And so I think that was really, um, I think just really inspiring and able for us to like open up things and I didn't have the walls covered and stuff, but I always make a giant playlist on Spotify with any project I'm working on, just listening for different inspiration or songs, or even if like certain sounds or instruments. And I'll tell you the Agatha one is by far the biggest one I've ever made. And it at a certain point just became very unwieldy because I just trying to find everything because there's just so many just wonderful, rich influences throughout this score and like the show just takes so many twists and turns and so that was kind of my playlist of weirdness that kind of kept me centered and when I would get lost or I think also jumping episode to episode and your brain is constantly having to like switch places that kind of helped me sort of recenter myself and allow Chris and I to be like on the same page with some of that and so I think and Chris and I have been working together a long time as well. And so I think, we have our own mind meld of sorts and are able to, even though we're not physically in the same space, just very in sync with each other and have just, I think, a good rapport with that. And so it's, yeah, just letting the magic happen.
Yeah, what I'm taking from this is more weirdness it creates more magic. So that's what we need in all of our lives.
We need more weirdness in Hollywood for sure.
All right, now final question for all of you before I let you go. Um, this is for everyone. And I realize some of this feels like asking you to pick from your favorite children. Um, but Mary, I'll start with you. If Who was the one character in the show, and you could even go to WandaVision, who really personally resonated with you, and why?
Oh, what a question. What a question. Hmm. Let's see. Um, I think Billy. I think Billy. I think just being constantly learning, um, recognizing like the talent of the people around you and learning from them constantly is something that I really resonate with. And an eagerness to be a part of a fantastic group and to learn more about what you love and pursue your interests.
Yes, I love that answer, and I feel the same. Like the eagerness, like come on, Billy's the one who's bringing them all together, and I love that. Yeah, how about yourself?
I mean, I did have that exact same thing with Billy, just by being like I was the youngest person in the room, and I also felt like that a lot of times. But I mean, just by nature of how much time I spent with her, I just have to say Lilia. She like, I felt like I resonated so much with Lilia because she felt so much like the opposite of me in a lot of ways. Um, I was the youngest in the room. She is the oldest of the coven. I I am someone who like my anxiety is about death and like thinking about death and stuff. And so writing about this character who comes to accept death and learn about death and meet death with a very brave face and see it not necessarily as an ending but as a beginning was just like a big turning point for me in my relationship with my own anxieties. And also, I'm like, she's the tarot girl. I'm the tarot girl. Like, so yeah, it's got to be Lilia.
That's perfect. Leave it to the writer to just like get you right in the heart right there with that connection. Michael, close us out. How about yourself? Who did you
Yeah.
resonate with?
I mean, I guess I was gonna say Billy as like a I was also, I guess, like an emo teenager sort of kind of, but I'm sure like, everyone kind of, a lot of people have that. But I'd say maybe then also Rio, I really I loved her character and then, what, how she like is represented in the show. And, I think it was just really cool, sort of really examining like her nature and the sort of the naturalistic, wonder of that. And I think that's something that, especially like in Western storytelling, we don't get that sort of nuance. Um, and I think that's something that's really special and was really unique to the story and unique to, I think, to the Marvel universe. And I think it was just something that I just like every cue and every scene with her like was just so fun to work on. And I think just yeah, very inspired by Aubrey's performance and sort of and how yeah, her character throughout the show. So
She's absolutely amazing. Well, that's our time for today. I'm inspired by all of you and this amazing show. Thank you so much for your time, Mary, Michael, Gia. It was really a pleasure to chat with you and just really peel back, the layers of this incredible show. I'm going to go watch it again right now after we disconnect. Thank you to Impact 24 PR. It's been such a pleasure. And, I hope everyone who watches this really understands. Make it weirder, and the magic matters. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.